Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Worth It Then Worth It Now, a segment that we run here where I get to look at games of yesteryear from a bygone era up to 12 months old basically. They're not contemporary, they're not in vogue at the moment, but it is an opportunity for me to just shout out cool games that I think deserve another look, and I line it up with a sale where possible on Steam. So today we're having a look at Car Mechanic Simulator 2021, and this is the big one. Now, according to Steam, I've never played this before, and I don't want to argue with Steam, that's quite possible, so I put in a couple of hours, a bit extra legwork than just usually dipping in for B-roll and nostalgia. Because one, I wanted to make sure that I was familiar with at least this version, but also two, I kind of just tumbled into it. I couldn't stop playing. I was having a really good time. Anyway, it's on a very, very deep sale at the moment. And if for some reason you haven't played it, or maybe you've played one of its predecessors, but not this one, which may well be what's happened with me, then this is worth checking out. And I feel like it is one of those things, if you don't watch the clock, you're just gonna lose time. So this is the most recent one. This is the one that's most reviewed and most played, and from my rudimentary digging around, it seems to be the most complete package. You know, maybe there's some extra mini games in here that not everyone agrees with, but as far as like being feature complete, this would be the one. And I think there's maybe 3 or 4 predecessors back to 2014, something like that. I'm not 100% sure. But the crux and the core is built upon from sequel to sequel to sequel. So suffice to say, there's nothing wrong with starting this one because, I mean, even if you do exhaust everything that it's got on offer, it's probably going to take you a bazillion hours. And at that point, you're either going to be burnt out and not want to play the previous ones, or you'll play them, you know, warts and all with missing features because you're already so hardcore connected. Anyway, in my estimation, this is the one to play, this is the one to start on, this is the one to finish. So what is it? Well, it's in the title. You're a car mechanic. It simulates being a car mechanic. It is the exception to the rule, or rather, it is the objective that all the slop aspires to be. I'm like you. In fact, I'm probably even more sensitive to all the simulator, shovelware, dog shit games, being that half my job is sorting through them. Every developer promises you that it's different, or that they have some vision, or, you know, me, my story's different. No, right? The market for simulation games across the board is absolutely piled in dog shit, and much of it is people just trying to emulate the success of this game, for example. There are a couple of other standouts, you know, things like House Flipper come to mind as well, but this one specifically, being that it's published by Playway SA, which on the back of the success of this and a handful of games have gone on to become publishers, and, you know, 90% of what they shovel out is pretty Anyway, I'm going a little bit beyond the scope of this game, but it's only to impress upon you if you're not familiar with this somehow, because this is the one that most people will know of, then yeah, this would be the one worth paying attention to. This would be the one that I'm actually going to cover. It's kind of rare that I look at a game with simulator in the title, because it's kind of rare that they're good. So yeah, you run your little garage. It was really cool going into it, because again, it treated me as a fresh, we're just going to assume, even though my ego can't quite take it, that I never actually played this before, but it, you know, said, hey, give this a tutorial go. And it was much more helpful and fast than what I remember from my first on-ramping with these games. So that probably would have been one of the predecessors not being as good at tutorializing. But as far as, you know, fumbling your way around the car, I know a bit myself. You know, I'm an ex-mechanical engineer from the Navy, so I've played with engines and pulled things apart and tinkered and all that. Not so much these days. So maybe I have a bit of a different perspective to a more, I don't know, cosmopolitan modern male that plays video games. Maybe you don't know anything about cars. In many ways, this is an educational tool. You know, it's not 100%, but it's the best that you're gonna get, and it's really good to at least familiarize yourself with the moving parts of a car. So my appeal is to that person, the person that's hardcore about cars, that pulls them apart, that lives and breathes, you know, car porn, probably already has this game and is just nostalging out because I'm covering it, right? But if you're a bit more of a nerd, if you're one of these modern blokes that doesn't know how to change a tire, you know, you do yourself a favor and put a couple of hours into this. You'll be very surprised how much you learn about the inner mechanical workings of cars and how kind of, how to put it, they all follow the same rule set, right? Like, even in my few hours just going back into this, I've covered multiple different little cars, little Volvo type things and Honda Civic looking things, but they've got totally different looking engines and layouts and everything like that. But at the same time, once you know where the oil cap is, you're going to know where it is forever, Same as, changing all the fluids, brake fluid and coolant and that sort of stuff as well. In fact, actually, but then there'll be some different things like, the radiator components, or even what the job asks you to do will take you in different directions. But it's good. It's designed to assist the fumbler, right? So it doesn't hold your hand, but it's not terribly obtuse, at least once you get your head around the controls. And I believe the controls are made in mind to be probably more console thumbstick friendly as well. It really likes radials. So I suppose the one fiddly thing from a PC perspective is that right click brings up a radial. It doesn't exit out of click in. I don't know what to call it, but like if you click onto a part and you start manipulating it, to get out of that, you have to press escape, not right click. It might seem like a small thing. It's a little bit of a pain, but once you get into a flow state and a rhythm, you get used to it. But generally speaking, there are different modes you can go into, and the main ones would be your deassemble and assemble, right? So if you mouse over some part, it'll tell you what it is. You can mouse over and have a look, and it has a really interesting, God, it's very difficult to put all this into words. If there's a part that you find interest, part of the camshaft build or maybe like a particular belt or whatever, but you can't get at it because while you have the benefit of a pseudo X-ray approach, you can't pull it off because it's got other parts piled upon it, right? It's sequential. It will highlight this. It will red highlight the specific part that's blocking you from doing that. And then if you were to mouse over that part, it will then highlight whatever's potentially locking that in. And you can find yourself in like a 5 times removed situation where you're at the very first bolt to access the inner workings of, say the engine, for example, because that's probably the most complex system you'll deal with at the beginning. And so through that, you can start to figure out what is layered on what and what's behind what, and you start to build a familiarity. And then inversely, you can reconstruct, and it puts little ghost shadows, and you can't really stuff up. You can't accidentally, sew the patient up and have a body part missing still on the table, right? You can't accidentally leave bits out of this, not really. The game doesn't really allow for that. But yeah, it's a really robust simulation of all the moving parts. Generally speaking, you just take jobs from a phone. There's a main mission job, which is a bit more robust, more involved, but there'll be these sort of timed side missions. This is all just the beginning stuff. The game gets pretty wild because I think most people that are curious about the longer thread, you can go to car auctions and you can sort of custom build and do all this sort of stuff. There's something to do with the money that you earn, but for the most part in the beginning, the core loop is maintenance work and someone's bringing the car for an oil change and you can do that. But one of the early missions that I had was tricky because they highlight all the parts that you need changing, but there were parts highlighted that I didn't know what they were, or rather like there was an error with the car, but they didn't explicitly tell me what it was. And so I was using all different inspect tools to try and figure it out, and it was a bit obtuse and I had to do a little bit of Googling. I think the game might have assumed some previous knowledge from previous games, but I managed to realize that if you take it out to the test track and you do a sort of rudimentary test lap, a little chicaning, a little acceleration and standing on the brakes, it will actually give you telemetry feedback and help you locate the problem with the car. And it turned out to be something wrong with the brakes. And it was cool. So the diagnostic end is really fascinating. And so you do start in this bang up, shitty gas station that you've reworked into a basic maintenance entrance. But you've got a whole back area. I've bought like a scrap recovery area. There's RPG leveling up, something that they've added over the years. I'm dating myself now. Clearly I did play the earlier games more, but they've got like tire and rim separators and tire rebalancers. There's a lot more focus in that. And it's got, your generic bloody synthwave background music that's inoffensive, but you can just as easily turn that off and put Spotify on. But it's one of those things. It's just really mesmerizing and fun, and there's a problem solving and a busy work interplay going on that, at least in my case, is less likely to frustrate and more to give you mini senses hours of achievement. And, you know, when you do those main story missions they might take you half an hour to really get in there and solve the bloody 20 different things wrong with it. It's satisfying, right? You know, you buy the replacement parts, and there was one mission, like I did a few side missions and I went into a big main one and I had to replace a lot of the engine, and the sunk cost to do that was thousands of dollars. And I recognize that if you were just doing the main mission after the other, no side quests, you'd probably get bricked there and have to put that main car up on blocks because you'd run out of money as the sunk cost component. You'll get reimbursed when you finish the mission, but you still have to pay for the parts up front. And so, you know, I accidentally dodged that, but I think that's clever. That's a clever way to institute side missions in any game, full stop. Anyway, look, I don't need to waffle or anything like that, and this is less of it's a weird nostalgia trip because I have nostalgia for the series, for one of the games of Clearly, but I don't know if it's this one, but then again, coming at it from that angle, I think even the oil change station used to move around manually and it was a pain in the ass, or maybe I'm making shit up, or maybe I played some other derivative crappy simulator game and it all blurs together. You know, it gets like that. Everything muddies together into one game after long, and my brain's turning to slop the longer I do this job. But my point is that this version is the best version that I've played. There's a reason why it's heralded as the best, and it is very self-apparent after having played it for a couple of hours to do this video. So check it out yourself. It's going for dollars and it's excellent. You never know, you might just learn something about how your car works and, you know, better appreciate the mechanical side. Anyway, might just leave it there for the time being and I'll catch you guys on the next one.